Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be another installment in my The Skinny On series. If you are new to my channel, hello and welcome. My name is Becca, I'm a registered dietitian, and if you've never seen any of my The Skinny On videos before, basically what I do is I just pick a certain food product and then I go through the nutrition label with you guys. I go through the fat, calories, sugar, all of that stuff, as well as the ingredients. And I basically just tell you guys what to look out for, what should be in there, maybe what shouldn't be in there. Basically just the 411 on any product, and my hope is that you can take this information and then when you are shopping in your local grocery store, it can help you to make some better choices because there generally are so many different products to choose from. So today's video is going to be all about protein powders, which is pretty exciting because it has definitely been very highly requested here on my channel. So I'm going to break it down. We're going to go through different protein powders and basically just try and figure out which ones are better and just different things to look out for when you are shopping for them. So before we dive into actually looking at some protein powders that are out there on the market, just wanted to kind of give a quick overview. So I don't know about you guys, but I feel like a lot of times when people think of protein powders, they immediately imagine, bodybuilder who's slugging back, a protein shake immediately after their workout. But protein powders really have come a long way, and they don't necessarily have to be used just in that instance. They actually, can be pretty helpful and beneficial outside of just, building muscle and things like that. So whether you want to drink it plain in a protein shake with just water or milk or whatever, or you want to add it into other foods, it's a nice way just to add some protein to foods that maybe aren't super high in protein. And the benefit of that is protein's very filling. It can help with appetite control, so it can be handy if you're trying to lose weight. So it definitely has, it serves a purpose, but I think the most important thing to remember is it's still, at the end of the day, it's a processed product, so it's something we still want to use in moderation in our diet, just like any other processed product. And I think when looking at protein powders, the three main things to consider is obviously, of course, like what is it made of, what is the nutrition facts and ingredient list saying, how expensive is it, because the price points really can vary, so whatever seems to be the best product that fits into your budget is probably going to be the best for you. And then also taste also can vary a lot with these different protein powders, so I think it's trying to find one that the ingredients are as good as you can get them in your price point and you also enjoy it. Protein powders themselves can come from different protein sources. They can either come from dairy, which is very popular. They can also be plant-based, which is another really popular option. And then there's also soy-based ones, which is not as popular. I would say if you're looking for a protein powder, either picking a dairy-based, so like a whey protein, or a plant-based protein, whether it's hemp protein, which is not as popular, but pea protein and brown rice protein, those are definitely more popular because their taste profile is just a little bit better than the hemp. But those would probably be the ones that I would look for depending on whether or not you're interested in consuming dairy or whether or not you'd rather go the plant-based route. Soy protein, the quality is just not as high as the protein found in whey or like a plant-based protein, so I would honestly just avoid it because it's just not as high quality, so why even waste your time? So as I was going through and reading all of the nutrition labels for all these different protein powders, I was finding that most of the time they're usually made up of obviously the protein blend of whether it's plant-based, whey-based, whatever. There's always usually going to be some kind of artificial and natural flavors, sometimes dyes depending on the protein powder. There's also usually going to be artificial sweeteners and then also some kind of thickeners or stabilizers, whether it's gums or a soy lecithin or something like that. So now that we've kind of got the overview and kind of know what to expect, let's just dive in and start looking at some specific protein powders. So the very first one I'm going to be going over is the gold standard whey protein powder. They have a ton of different flavors. I know it's popular because I've seen it in a lot of places. So I just have the nutrition facts up on my phone. So I'm just going to be comparing all of the vanilla flavors for each protein powder to try and keep it as similar as possible. So for one scoop there is 110 calories, 1 gram of fat, sodium is 130 milligrams, 2 grams of sugar, which is just from the dairy, that's not added sugar, and 24 grams of protein, so okay. But more importantly, what are the ingredients? That is what I'm most interested in. So the very first ingredient is protein blend made up of whey protein isolates, whey protein concentrate, and whey peptides. So perfect, that's what we want. It's a protein powder, so the first ingredient better be a protein blend. If it's not, you're in trouble. It should always be the first ingredient. Moving on, the next ingredient is natural and artificial flavors. Then lecithin, which is an emulsifier, helps keep everything together, keep stuff from separating out. Salt, then acesulfame potassium, which is an artificial sweetener. Next is aminogen. I didn't know what that was. I had to look it up. It's basically just a set of protein enzymes, so a lot of the protein that's in the powder is already somewhat broken down, so essentially it's easier to absorb and you therefore absorb more. So that's what that is. Sucralose, which is another artificial sweetener. And then the very last one is lactase, which is just the enzyme that breaks down lactose, which is the sugar that's in dairy and what can give people some GI discomfort, so it just helps people be able to digest this protein powder more easily. So this didn't have anything out of the ordinary, like I said, for what's normal for protein powders. Definitely some artificial sweeteners, definitely some artificial just stuff in there in general, but nothing funky outside of those parameters, I guess. And the price point for this, for the big canister, it's around $30, so that is the price for the gold standard whey protein. So the next protein powder I'm going to be going over is the Pure Protein Whey Protein Powder. So again, I'm looking at the vanilla flavor. So it has 130 calories, 1.5 grams of fat, so a little bit above the last one. Sodium is 55 milligrams, which is definitely less than the last one. And sugar is 5 grams, which is a little bit more than the gold standard. So the ingredients are protein blend, which is made up of whey protein concentrate and whey protein isolate, fructose, natural flavors, soy lecithin, and stevia extract. So this does have a little bit less ingredients than the first one we were looking at, the gold standard. So it obviously has protein as the first ingredient, which is what we want. Fructose is one of the sweeteners used in this, which makes me a little hesitant, a little nervous, because fructose occurs naturally. It is naturally occurring. It's pretty high in fruit actually, but among other things. But here in America, we tend to sweeten a lot of things with fructose because it can be more shelf stable and also cheaper than regular sugar, which is why you'll often see a lot of things sweetened with high fructose corn syrup. But without going too deep into this, so basically fructose in the body, when it is getting processed, it can be way more favorable to be stored as fat than regular sugar. Not going to go into why, but just know that that is a fact. And then also there are studies coming out that say that fructose may not trigger the same like satiety cues in the brain that sugar would. It just kind of flies under the radar, so we can eat more without feeling satisfied, which is a little nerve-wracking. It was never a problem before because it was naturally occurring in smaller amounts, but now we are like flooding our food supply and all of these processed foods that we consume with fructose, so now it potentially could be becoming a much larger problem. So I like to avoid added fructose if I can, when I can, obviously not all the time because I do lead a balanced lifestyle, but I will say that that makes me a little nervous. I don't know if I'd pick that one just based off of the fructose. And it's also the second ingredient on the list, so you know it's a decent percentage of that protein powder is made up of that fructose. The next ingredient is natural flavors, then soy lecithin, and then stevia extract. So just like the other one, we've got some kind of, flavoring, we've got some kind of stabilizer, emulsifier, and then also some artificial sweetener. So that is the Pure Protein powder, and the price for that, for like the larger canister, is around $27. So similar to the gold standard whey, a little bit cheaper. So the next protein powder I'm going to be looking at is the Quest protein powder. I'm looking at the vanilla milkshake flavor. So it has 100 calories, so very similar. It has 0 grams of fat. It has 150 milligrams of sodium, 0 grams of sugar, 3 grams of carb, which is most likely just from the dairy, and 22 grams of protein. And then moving on to the ingredients, the very first ingredient is the protein blend. Good, that's what we want. Next ingredient is natural flavors, then contains less than 2% of the following: cellulose gum, so one of those emulsifier stabilizers, sunflower lecithin, another one of those, steviol glycosides, so stevia, salt, then carrageenan, which is another kind of thickener, which has some interesting potential side effects. I wouldn't worry about it too much, but if you can find one without it, that's obviously probably better. And then the last ingredient is sucralose, which is another artificial sweetener. So similar to the other ones, they've got the natural flavorings, the artificial sweeteners, and then some kind of stabilizers, emulsifiers. Again, they're processed products. You're not really going to get around these in most cases. And then the price for the Quest protein powder for a canister of it is around $40. So a little bit more expensive than the other two. Based on just looking at the ingredients, I don't think it's necessarily worth a lot more than the first two we looked at, but maybe the taste is a lot better. I'm not sure. So the next and the last of the whey protein powders I'm going to be looking at today is the Whole Foods 365 brand. So let's see, I have the label here. It has 90 calories for one scoop, has 1.5 grams of fat, 2 grams of carbohydrate, 1 gram of sugar, which is likely probably just the dairy, and 60 milligrams of sodium, so less than some of the other ones, so that is good. And then lastly, this one has 16 grams of protein, which is not as much as the other ones, for sure. Definitely less. So the first ingredient is protein blend, which is good, that's what we want. It also has sunflower lecithin, again an emulsifier, natural vanilla flavor, xanthan gum, which is another kind of thickener emulsifier type thing, and then stevia extract. So again, artificial sweeteners, some kind of emulsifier, stabilizer, as well as some natural flavoring, and then the protein. So the Whole Foods brand one seems to have the cleanest ingredient list out of the whey proteins I looked at. However, it does have less protein per serving. And then the price for this Whole Foods brand one is $27 for a canister of it. So similar to those first two price points we looked at, so definitely on the lower end so far. Alright, so the next protein powder I'm going to be looking at is our first plant-based one, and this is by the brand Orgain. So they have a few different flavors, at least chocolate and vanilla. I'm going to be looking at the vanilla. So the nutrition label for the Orgain plant-based protein, for 2 rounded scoops there is 150 calories, 4 grams of fat, 125 milligrams of sodium, which seems to be kind of like middle of the road from the other ones that we looked at. Has 13 grams of carb, including 5 grams of fiber, 1 gram of sugar, and 5 grams of sugar alcohols, which is, don't love that, and then 21 grams of protein. Okay, so then moving on to the ingredients. The first ingredient is the Orgain Organic Protein Blend, which is good, that's what we want. It's made up of pea protein, brown rice protein, as well as hemp protein, so it's got all 3 of those in there. The next ingredients, all of these ingredients are organic by the way. Acacia gum, high oleic sunflower oil, inulin, which is like a fiber, rice dextrins, which is like carbohydrate fragments from rice. It's like used as like a thickener, filler. Then rice bran extract, rosemary extract. Next is organic erythritol, which is your sugar alcohols. Natural flavors, sea salt, guar gum, xanthan gum, acacia gum again, and then organic stevia and monk fruit extract. So this one has a ton of stabilizers and fillers, and there's a lot going on in this protein powder. I wouldn't have expected that, just because it seems like one of the better ones, but you know, you always gotta read the ingredients because you never know. So yeah, this one has a ton of stabilizers, emulsifiers, fillers. It also has artificial sweeteners, there's stevia and monk fruit in there, as well as sugar alcohols. This is the first one we've come across thus far in this video that has sugar alcohols, which is just another non-nutritive sweetener, meaning, you know, there's no calories. There isn't like a major downside to sugar alcohols, but they can in large quantities cause like GI disruption, so it's just something to be aware of. So yeah, again, it kind of ticks all the boxes: the protein, the artificial sweeteners, emulsifiers and stabilizers, as well as natural flavors, and also has the extra sugar alcohol. So this one is meh. And the price for a canister of Orgain is $25, which is definitely on the less expensive end. It is on par with some of those cheaper ones we talked about earlier. So the next one I'm going to be looking at is Sunwarrior, which I know is a very popular plant-based protein powder brand, and I'm just going to be looking at their classic protein powder. They have a ton of different products, but just the classic one, and I'm looking at the vanilla flavor. So for one scoop, there is 80 calories, 0 grams of fat, there is 55 milligrams of sodium, which is definitely on the lower end of what we've seen thus far, 4 grams of carb, 2 grams of fiber, 1 gram of sugar, and 15 grams of protein. So definitely less protein than the other ones. This is more on par with that, the Whole Foods brand whey protein. So the ingredients for the Sunwarrior protein is raw whole grain brown rice protein. So that is our first ingredient, that's what we want. The next one is rice oligodextrin, which again is like those carbohydrate fragments. It's kind of used as a filler or, you know, thickener. Vanilla extract, stevia, xanthan gum, ancient sea salt, and pectin. So Again, this kind of ticks all of those boxes. We've got protein as the first ingredient. We've got some thickeners and stabilizers, the rice oligodextrin, xanthan gum. We also have pectin, which is also used as a thickener. And then we've got vanilla extract, so that's our flavoring. At least that is more natural than an artificial flavoring. And then stevia, so our artificial sweetener. So again, it ticks all the boxes, but I would say this one is definitely better than that Orgain one that we looked at. Pricing wise, it is $53 of Sunwarrior for a big canister, so definitely the most that we've seen so far, and definitely compared to the Orgain, it is more expensive. So the ingredient profile is definitely a lot better, however, it is more expensive. So the very last protein powder I'm looking at is a plant-based protein, and it is from the brand Naked Nutrition. I believe that's what it's called. I could be wrong, but I feel like this is a newer brand. I've just never seen it before, but again, I'm not really looking at these very often, so I could be wrong. But so let's look at the ingredients. This is for their vanilla flavored pea protein powder. For 2 scoops, it is 140 calories, 2.5 grams of fat, 230 milligrams of sodium, which is definitely more than the other ones that we've seen. It's almost double compared to some of the others that we looked at. It has 8 grams of carb, 1 gram of fiber, 5 grams of sugar, and 25 grams of protein, so a good amount of protein. And the ingredients for this is yellow pea protein, vanilla, and organic coconut sugar. That's it. So this is definitely the cleanest of the ones that we've seen thus far. It just has protein as the first ingredient, which is what we want, vanilla, which is a natural flavoring, and organic coconut sugar. So no artificial sweeteners used in this, and there's also no stabilizers, additives, emulsifiers, anything like that. And the price for this protein powder is $55 for a canister, so it's right around the Sunwarrior, and it does have a little bit better ingredient profile. Is the taste, you know, similar? I don't know, but it's definitely, as far as ingredients goes, it would be a better choice. Other than the sodium, it's a lot higher in sodium. That's the only con of this one, I would say. This Naked Nutrition brand also has a whey protein powder. It's $90, so if you're really looking to invest, then maybe this is a good one. Again, it's very, very clean ingredients, just like the plant-based one, but it is also very expensive. With that being said, there are ways to get these protein powders at discounted prices. There's so many online retailers that will sell them to you at like a lower price. One of them is iHerb. That's a website that I use all the time, and I actually do have a coupon code for iHerb. You guys can get 10% off your first order. I've had that coupon code for a little while. I will put that down there for you if you're interested, but there are always ways that you can kind of get around these expensive prices when it comes to buying more quality products. That is just one of the ways. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. The main take-home message of all of this is definitely that protein powder, you know, it can be very useful and beneficial, but at the end of the day, it's still a processed product, and it's something we should be, you know, eating or drinking in moderation because it is processed. But that is all I have for this video. If you guys are not following me on Instagram and Snapchat, make sure to do so. I'm on there pretty much every day and would love to connect with you guys on there. And of course, if you guys are not subscribed to my channel yet, go ahead and do that as well, so you can just join this little community here on YouTube that I have going. And yeah, that's all I have for this video, guys. So thank you so much for watching this one, and I will see you guys hopefully in the next one. Bye.